I've had a lot of conversation with shops on, they've hit a stopping point with the dealer and trying to get sponsorship, and just having a conversation with us or sending an email or seeing us at a conference, we're able to help out and just provide some guidance.
Welcome to another episode of the Collision Vision, driven by Auto Body News. I'm your host, Cole Strandberg, and today we continue our OEM certification series with a highly practical, behind-the-scenes look at the certification process from two professionals who live in this world every single day. Joining me are Christian Ruecker and Gabriel Morley from DEKRA, one of the biggest names in certification and inspection across the globe for our industry. In this episode, we'll unpack what it really takes to pursue and maintain OE certifications, what makes BMW's process unique, and how to evaluate the ROI of certification across all sorts of different types of brands. If you're considering OE certification or want to improve how you leverage the ones you already have, this episode is for you. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by asTech. asTech is dedicated to safety, precision, and innovation in vehicle diagnostics. With industry-leading scanning and calibration solutions, asTech ensures every repair meets OEM standards, enhancing safety and customer satisfaction. Continuously testing and scanning new vehicles, asTech refines its technology to stay ahead of modern repair challenges. A tool stack covering 40 plus brands and a network of over 400 ASE and I-CAR certified technicians provides fast, accurate diagnostics that maximize efficiency. asTech, driven by precision, powered by safety. Visit astech.com today or call them at 1-888-486-1166. Enjoy the show. Christian and Gabe, thank you both so much for joining us here on the Collision Vision.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cole.
Looking forward to an awesome, insightful conversation. This is a topic on OEs that has been one of my favorite series we've had here on the Collision Vision, and looking forward to our little piece of that conversation today. Going to be pretty wide-reaching, but before we jump in, I want to set the stage with a little bit of information about you guys. So, Gabe, let's start with you, man. Talk to us about who you are and a quick background on you.
Yeah, so originally I started in the insurance industry. Shortly after, 4 or 5 years in the insurance industry, I went to OEM Life. I ran the certified collision program for BMW North America. I stayed with the OE for about 8 years, transitioned over to Verifax Automotive, and then eventually found myself at DEKRA here for about 2.5 years.
Awesome. Christian, I've known you a little bit longer than I've known Gabe. I see you all over the place, but talk to us about your story as well.
Sure. Yeah, all over the place is probably the right thing. So as everybody can hear, there's a little bit of an accent. So I'm originally from Germany, born and raised in Wolfsburg, basically with a Volkswagen logo on my forehead. That's also where I started my career. I was in several after-sales positions at Volkswagen over a span of roughly 11 years. Ended my career there with 4 years of running the global collision body and paint team, basically. And then my wife told me that we are moving to the States. And of course, when the boss is telling you something, you follow. And in 2015, then I found a job here in North America with DEKRA and had there several business development and sales roles, operational roles, always close with my heart to the collision industry. And that's where we got more and more involved in body shop certification programs. And here we are.
Love it. And that's what we'll talk about today, and a few different weaves here and there in between, kind of some specifics as well as some kind of broader views on the space. Gabe, I'll start with you kind of in our first question, and I want to frame it as a bit of an ROI conversation for shops considering certification, specifically with some of these mass market brands. Talk to me about how you would view kind of the ROI case for pursuing those certifications.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a tricky one, right? Is what am I going to get out of this? There's a lot of commitment, training, tools, expenditure. So ROI is a really important one. I think the first thing whether any certification you go through, you have to really look at what's your business like to begin with, right? Does the business mix today even make sense to go after that type of mass market brand? But I think the ROI is there. I think, the investment, the training, when you have a lot of vehicles on a road of a certain type or certain brand, that's obviously drawing the customers in, right? So if you take a look at all your investments on a per unit in schedule, per unit investment, so if I have to spend X per equipment, X on training, and you can spread that cost over many vehicles instead of few, the investment doesn't really seem so bad. So I think there's an opportunity to analyze your business mix, what percentage of a certain brand is making up that portfolio. And then if I have to invest X dollars in there, what does that look like spreading that over whatever that potential business looks like, right? And that's kind of where I would start with an ROI. I mean, and then there's a whole set of intangibles that you get from that. It's the partnership, it's the brand recognition. Maybe it's a direct partnership with a local dealer beyond just the global brand. And what does that do with you in the community? How does that actually help you build those inroads in the community and, lead to organic growth from there? So I think there's a lot of different ways to look at ROI, and it's up to that shop to really determine what's the priority at the moment. Is it the growth? Is it a dollar amount? Is it brand exposure? And really take it from there.
Love it. So who are the best and worst OEs to work with? Just kidding. Don't answer that. No, Christian, I'm going to throw it over to you, man. And sort of the same question, but maybe framed a little bit differently. What factors help determine whether an OEM certification is going to be worth the investment for a given shop?
I think Gabe touched a little bit on that, right? I think first and foremost, you should need to look at your market. How many units in operation of a specific brand actually driving around in your market? Combine that with an accident rate, and you kind of get an idea of what is your market potential in a certain area. There are various stakeholders in the industry that can help you with this type of data. If you are connected with a local dealer, with, I don't know, a paint provider and so on, they often like to help shops in determining that. Other factors might be, do you have eventually insurance companies that are strong in your area that you can talk to? Do you have a presence in general that you are known as a quality repair provider? That helps, obviously. I think these are the core things that you need to look at when you start this whole process.
You mentioned something important too, and it's been a theme throughout this month's series, and it's, okay, you get the certification, now what? So Christian, from your perspective, how can a shop sort of view this as a strategic investment and make the most of it to where it's not just a logo you can put on your website or on your wall, but really make it something that's impactful for your business?
I mean, you started with ROI, right? So the other part of looking at money is also that you need to reduce your risk. If you start repairing vehicles without really knowing all the details about the vehicle, it gets more risky, because if it's a mass model, if it's a premium or luxury model, the technology is getting more and more complex in all of them. So there are repair procedures that you should access to really know how you repair a car. And that is one benefit of being certified, that you get more and more resources and access to repair procedures, to maybe bulletins from an OEM where they explain exactly on how to do a certain repair or why certain repairs are necessary. That not only prevents you from doing a wrong repair, but it may also help you in your discussion with an insurance company that needs to pay the bill at the end of the day. So I think that's our really crucial items that you need to consider in that part.
Well said. Gabe, kind of the same question. Any advice for shops? All right, we've got the certification. How can we best leverage this?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is link up with your local field rep for that brand. So every brand has a field team out there in one shape or another, and with different responsibilities, but getting that relationship is key. And, having that direct line to a OEM rep will maybe allow you to get some of that information a little bit sooner than others. They come by and visit, they tell you, hey, this is coming up, we got to be prepared for it. They can talk to you about different programs that are going on. I know both Christian and I, at our time at an OE, we threw out a lot of incentives. Every month incentives were changing. So, being able to have that real-time information as soon as possible and having that good relationship is critical to kind of building out kind of a broader ROI for yourself. I think the other thing I would do immediately after I get a certification, even though it's part of the process to link up with the dealer, I would set some sort of regular cadence with that dealer rep, the GM, try to get a little bit higher than a parts manager or wholesale manager, get the management at the dealership involved, and start that cadence with, here's the successes, right? Here's where the partnership's bringing you, because that dealer is going to play a crucial role in your success, also attracting the vehicles and just also co-marketing. So, once you get that certification, I get right back in front of that GM at the dealership and say, look, I've invested, I've done, I've got the certification. Now, how do we go tackle this?
It's a great point. I think for me, at least, and I think a lot of others, you look at these OEM certifications as a badge that represents, number one, an operational tool, right? We have the resources to repair this brand properly. And there's some sort of certification that claims that. Also a marketing tool, of course, but it's also, to your point, a bit of a sales and business development tool. If you're a certified shop for a dealer brand, you're going to be a whole lot more likely to be able to get in there and have a conversation than if you're just somebody else off the street who has not gone through that effort and done that. And from that perspective, I think it's an amazing, amazing benefit. When we talk about OE certifications, in my mind, again, at least, there's sort of two distinctions. There's OEM certification, and then there's highline premium OEM certifications. And a key differentiator for me is parts restrictions. So, Gabe, I'll start with you on this one. Which OEMs currently restrict parts or access to these repair procedures? And what's some of the logic behind them doing that?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, a lot of them do it already. I want to say at this point, almost all OEMs have some form or fashion of restriction, right? A lot of them are on specialty vehicles, low volume specialty vehicles that come out, mainly because it's not the core of their technology. It's a highlight of their technology. But you're starting to see even the new manufacturers like a Rivian or a Lucid come into here. And then you have also a lot of the premiums where they're increasing their part share. So, BMW recently announced that, they're going parts restriction on mass volume vehicles. So for the most part, it was very select vehicle models for a certain run of time. And then that went away. But now you're talking things like a 3 Series, a 5 Series, and thousands of parts on restriction. So I think that's going to change quite a bit. And
very interesting.
Yeah, I think you'll continue to see that grow as the technology advances.
Seems like it's trending that way for sure. Christian, how do parts restrictions influence which shops are chosen for approval by OEMs, and how do they decide where they want to grant those certifications?
It's a tricky but also logical question. So if you look at parts restriction first, it's like protecting the brand, protecting the repair, because the OEM wants to make sure that only the ones that really understand and have the resources today in place get these restricted parts, because they're normally tied to a complex repair that requires certain tools, equipment, or specific training. The second part of that is that OEMs obviously want to provide a return of investment to their shop network. With restricted parts, they have a better mechanism to do that, right? So it's like you see that only the ones that are truly certified can order these parts. So it's valuable to go full throttle through that whole process and become that basically top tier certified provider. But to do the return of investment, the other part is that an OEM will get more and more access eventually through first notice of loss through telematics. So they eventually can help somebody that has an accident to lead them to the best certified store that's there, because the OEM may have the first call that comes back right to them. If I have parts restriction in place, I need to make sure that I don't send somebody 200 miles across the country to the next certified location. So I need to increase my network. But I can also not just put a shop, like 5 shops right next to each other, only because they have the qualifications. I need to be cognizant of that on how I do this, how I map it out, that it makes sense, so that you don't have competition between two shops in the same market if the volume or the market share is not high enough in that market. I hope this kind of makes sense.
No, absolutely. And one further distinction between maybe the mass market to the luxury to the really particular and highline luxury is the requirement of a dealer sponsorship. Gabe, I think you talked about, and we collectively talked about, using these OEM certifications to build out dealer relationships. In some cases, it's the other way around. So which OEMs today, or some examples, require a dealer sponsorship, and what can shops do to build those relationships where they're put in a good position to get that?
Yeah, I think at this point today, again, like for like restricted parts, I think every program requires some level of sponsorship, whether it's 90% of the programs require it at the dealer level, but there are programs that the OE is sponsoring directly. So maybe they don't have that traditional franchise model out there. And so your sponsorship's coming directly from the brand. But, I can't really think of a program that doesn't require some sort of sponsorship involvement at one level or another. The thing to really look at that relationship and how can you start that or get that kick started is really the type of conversation a shop's going to have with that, right? In the past, it's been historically a lot of, hey, I'm a body shop and I want to become sponsored and I want to do your work. And now a lot of that conversation is switching to more of that partnership dynamic. So, if you look at the situation with mass volume restricted parts, a lot of OEMs go for, I have a dealership, so I need a body shop, right? They're going for a 1-to-1. As long as I get a body shop where I have a dealer, I should be okay. But look at the size and scale of the dealership operations versus a body shop that is mixed brand. So that capacity gets eaten up quite a bit. And if you're going to start restricting more and more parts and funneling that work into those partners, you're going to have to open up capacity. So that conversation between a shop and a dealership to get started really kind of has to shift from, hey, I can go do the work and I like your brand, to, I'm going to become a new partner for you, right? I'm going to help take up that capacity for you. So you may have a body shop of your own. You may already have a sponsored body shop, but you're going to need more. And let's be on the same team kind of conversation. How do we take care of all of our shared customers for this brand and act as a team versus, shop against shop trying to vie for that same dealer sponsorship. So I think that's probably the biggest dynamic I see changing right now, is the type of conversation to start that relationship has shifted drastically.
Makes total sense. So many moving parts in the world of OEM certifications. To open up this series, we talked to Mike Anderson. He said something along the lines of, not all OE programs are created equal. And he's 100% right. There's so many nuances and technicalities and different requirements, not to mention the equipment requirements, the training requirements. There's so much to think about. Whichever one of you wants to answer this first, a general question: how does DEKRA help a shop navigate some of these conversations and considerations?
I can start. So what obviously happens is, when we are at conferences, when we make connections, build relationships, that not only do we talk to MSOs, but and they are, depending on the size, obviously often powerful enough to help themselves. But individual shops often don't know where to start. And there's where we are more than happy to help, to just have a conversation and walk them through what's important. And as we mentioned now multiple times throughout this call, it often just starts with hey, talk to your dealer. What's your market? Look at your market. What's your repair mix that you have in your shop? But we also can help with a pre-assessment, where we can look at their existing tools, equipment, and training, and run that against the various standards from OEMs to determine, hey, based on your mix of tools and equipment in your shop, you may be close to XYZ brand, and maybe that's a starting point if that brand is really in your marketplace. So that's, I think, the easiest one that I could start with. Gabe, you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, DEKRA has lots of tools and technology, and learnings from all the audits that we've done and programs we participated in. So, to Christian's point, when a shop approaches us and, maybe it's for an audit for one OEM, and while we're there, they're saying, hey, I'm thinking about this program. So, we're either able to leverage the tools we have and give that to the shop and say, hey, you know what, here's something you can self-service and take a look and do your own homework, or if you're busy and want us, we can do those self-assessments. So I think there's quite a bit. I think it depends on the problem that the dealers are having. I know personally myself, I've had a lot of conversation with shops on they've hit a stopping point with the dealer and trying to get sponsorship, and just having a conversation with us or sending an email or seeing us at a conference, we're able to help out and just provide some guidance in those situations.
And if I may add one thing, right? One thing is really also like putting a shop in the place of what they actually bring to the table. So often they think we are just a small body shop around the corner that does the work, but ultimately they are an extension of an OEM. They are part of the customer journey. So if a person has an accident, which is the worst situation, you are the one that helps them out of this pity circumstances that they are in. And if you do a really good job, a premium brand may get the customer back and sell the next vehicle again to them. If the customer journey is really bad, they may not only switch the insurance company, but also the vehicle brand, based off the experience. And I think to get this across to a dealer, to say, hey, I not only repair vehicles, I not only buy parts, but I'm an extension of your brand, Mr. Dealer. And if I have total losses, I can bring them back to your new car sales department. All these are important things that a shop often is not aware of.
That mutually beneficial relationship, I think, is key here. That symbiotic relationship makes total sense. When we were planning this conversation, I asked if we could run through a specific OE certification at somewhat of a high level. And the brand I specifically asked about was BMW, and you guys were gracious enough to do that. So I wanted to go ahead and at a high level kind of set the stage for us and walk us through the BMW OE certification process from start to finish. And I know there's a lot to that, but I'll hand the reins over to you guys and bounce back and forth and get us a good education here.
Yeah. So, I mean, first is linking up with that dealership, right? You gotta, if you're an independent shop, you got to get that sponsorship approval. And, at a dealership that may be, depending on the dealership body, it may be resting directly with a parts manager, a wholesale manager, or, it has to go through the shop service manager. So, finding that piece first and even getting that interest there, then the dealership has to say, yeah, I want to sponsor this shop. And that causes a whole nother string of events to happen. So there's forms, documents, the field has to sign off on it. There's a look into the primary market area, a PMA. Like most OEMs, there's a territory for the franchise. And in this particular case, they have to operate within certain parameters of that territory. So, then zip code, address, all that's taken a look at. And it's got to go through those regional approvals to even start getting into the program. So once all that's signed off, you'll get a packet, a welcome packet from the administrator, which kind of outlines, hey, here's the criteria, here's all the things that's expected. You're in the program now, and you're going to either get set up for a pre-audit or an audit, and you got to start checking off those boxes, right? So do you have the tools, equipment? You have to get enrolled in training. So based on the training criteria, every job role has a set of training courses they need to complete, and a certain percentage of that has to be done to be considered either provisional or fully certified. And in order to do that training, that's the dealership also plays a role in this. And this is why I think maybe we touch on the fact that this partnership is so critical. So if you're an independent body shop, that dealer is going to enroll you into training for BMW specifically. So they need to enter their people into those jobs, job roles. Hey, this is my technician, this is my body shop manager. And then based on that, then they're going to help sign them up for classes. So they're constantly playing a role in your success of completing this certification process. Once that's done, you're going to get audited. And the audit is there to verify, right? So you said you had it. These are the criteria, and that audit's there to verify that everything checks out. Once that's done, you'll get your welcome packet. You'll get access to different systems such as the repair instructions, the marketing. You'll get a plaque, and and then it's up to you to keep maintaining that certification throughout the year as criteria changes. People are checking in on you to make sure that you're staying up with all the new criteria.
How about after all of that? What kind of communication can a BMW certified collision center expect to keep ongoing with that BMW dealership and or kind of the field team?
Yeah, ongoing. I mean, once you get access to that, you're into newsletters, updates, bulletins. Again, you should be setting up your own meetings with the dealer, the field reps in there. As things change, you'll also maybe sometimes hear from the administrators like ourselves and just kind of give you the heads up that things are changing and what to be on the lookout for. BMW is one of the really good ones that has a committed annual conference for all the shops to get together and network and hear from each other. So be on the lookout for those invitations, and I highly recommend participating when you can, because there's so much that to gain from not only the networking side. I mean, BMW does a great job of giving you what is the business been, what's the business going to be, where they're going, so you get a directional feel for it. But they do a great job of breakout sessions, training sessions, and just giving you time to connect with others in that program. So honestly, the communication after certification, there's a lot, and it's really up to the individual shop to decide to participate in it. It is a partnership, and it is something that I think the shop has to build into their culture and say, I want to stay informed, I want to participate, I'm staying on top of the news, and let me connect with my peers in this.
And I think, some other OEMs do that similar, that they provide support to the individual shop or to a region there. But what I know, obviously, and have experienced closer, is the direct support that the BMW provides to also from an educational standpoint, that they provide people from the training department, from the field, and maybe host a workshop at the body shop to invite adjusters, local adjusters in the area, other stakeholders in the industry, to really educate them what the newest model of a BMW entails and why certain repair procedures are necessary. So it's like really also educational support to not only educate the shop, but also the market that surrounds that shop or the stakeholders that the shop is dealing with, which I found very, very beneficial.
Yeah, I think, Cole, that there's a lot of communication from all programs that come out once you've been certified, but it's really up to the shop to make the most of it.
Makes total sense there, right? You're getting the certification. I've used this comparison multiple times throughout this series. Is sort of, you've qualified for the race, right? You've made it. You got all the tools you need. Somebody's decided you're qualified to compete. Now you got to perform. And in a lot of cases, that's the hardest part. As it relates to BMW specifically, I know you mentioned in all of these programs, there's pretty constant and consistent evolution in the requirements, the equipment requirements, training, all that stuff. What are some other challenges you should prepare for? Again, in this case, using BMW as an example, when pursuing certification, are there any standard pitfalls or things that are constantly stumbling blocks for folks?
I think the first that comes to mind, which is always hard to keep up for everybody, is training. And if you have a very technology-driven brand like a BMW, there's constant updates based on new identified repair procedures, new technology coming with new models, where new training comes out that is conducted by BMW directly. So to keep up with that as a shop is definitely not easy. But again, it comes down to the shop to be proactive, to look out for what's being communicated, what's coming down the pipe. How can I secure my slots that I get out to the training? I think that's the first that comes to my mind. The other component, often with new models, there may be new tools or new equipment necessary that I have to purchase. I think most OEMs are very cognizant of making sure that there are specifications on tools and equipment that can be maybe also utilized by other OEMs or by other shops that are repairing other OEMs. But there are special tools that are just for that specific brand that you need to buy. And that can sometimes cost a lot of money. And that's also something that people need to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think most OEMs are also cognizant of maybe giving a heads up to those big investments, and maybe they'll tell you in Q3, Q4, hey, for next year's program, you're going to have to make these investments. I think the other thing to look out for too is the customer expectations that come along. So, hey, like you said, now you're in the race. Now customers are coming to you as an extension of the brand and of the dealership. And the expectation's high. I mean, when you go in for an oil change with a premium brand, right? You got Wi-Fi, you've got snacks, you've got loaner cars of the same brand, you've got amenities, big dealership, and then that's for maybe $100-$200 oil change, and then I get a $30,000 estimate at a collision, and what is my experience like? And so I think when you choose to pursue certain types of certifications, you should also look at what does that brand mean to people and what does it represent, and go even mystery shop the dealers around you, right? Does somebody greet you when you get in the door, or are they using technology? Are they using paper and pen? And because those OEs spend a lot of time and effort to bring loyalty to that logo. And they craft that brand to be a part of someone's lifestyle, and now you're an extension of that team. And I think that's super important, that a lot of shops don't necessarily spend the time on understanding, where that expectation aligns.
Sure. No, it makes sense. Yeah, at getting certified, you've elevated the bar. You've set the bar to where you gotta now really compete against the dealership, sort of, to ensure you're meeting those expectations that brand is setting. I think it's a great way to look at it. As it relates to BMW, we talked a bit about their parts restriction evolving and going downstream into their models, the 3 Series, the 5 Series. How do we anticipate that impacts the certified shop network there? Is that going to lead to an increased number, in your opinion, of BMW certified shop opportunities to meet that demand that the non-certified independents can no longer meet?
I mean, to a degree, right? As I mentioned earlier, with rolling out a strong program like parts restriction and then telematics, FNOL, capturing, steering clients as much as possible, or at least leading them to a certified shop, I think will have an impact on the growth of a network, because you want to make it as convenient as possible for the consumer. You don't want to have them traveling half the country to get to the next certified location. So, but with that is also a limitation. You will not see that in one area of so many shops just because. It will be limited to where do I have white spots? Where does the BMW or the OEM view on the market make sense? Do I have enough units in operation to support 3 shops? Or eventually I need to have 5 shops, or maybe just 1. I think that's the bigger driver of a decision where I put new plays versus just parts restriction.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some maybe maturity in the collision industry in terms of the analytics that are being used. And it's not just dealership to body shop. I think you're going to start looking at capacity hours, technician throughput, those kind of metrics that have typically been used on the fixed operation side for many decades. I think those are going to start to play a bigger role into what does that do for sponsorship growth.
Makes total sense. And we've touched on this throughout the conversation, but I'm going to use a term that's very now generic podcaster. In addition to hosting the podcast, I'm an avid consumer of podcasts. And one term that I hear consistently now that I don't use, I'm going to use for the very first time right here, is double click. So let's double click a little bit on DEKRA's involvement throughout that process and kind of where you guys hold hands as someone is pursuing this journey toward a BMW certification.
I think with BMW, it's a very close relationship where we try to be ourselves an extension of their brand, so that the DEKRA brand is not that much in focus. It's much more the BMW brand that is front and center, not only by the consumer, but also with the shop. And the core is working in the background and supporting BMW's field team, supporting BMW's administration of the process. So there may be email communication or like scheduling, making sure that shops are in the know of what's coming when we do an audit. But a lot of the things that we communicate with the shop is also passed and partnered with their field team so that they are the front and center and the main point of contact for a shop. So my buddy Buck on the lift inspection side of DEKRA always says they are working in the shadows of a shop when they do lift inspection. I think we are working in the shadows of the administration of certified collision, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Well put. And I know it's a daunting task to start to think about OE certifications and all the different things to think about. So having a partner in the shadows to help along, I think is of tremendous comfort to folks. I want to zoom out a little bit away from just BMW and kind of go back into the general world of OEM certification. So what are some of the biggest missteps and misconceptions you see from shops that are early on in the conversation and in the process of pursuing insert brand OEM certification?
I think one of the first things to see is that conversation that they're having, especially if they have to get sponsorship and they maybe not have the best relationship to start. It's that value proposition, first foot forward, that I think a lot of shops don't give themselves enough credit for in the role that they will play upon completing certification. Yeah, I think that a lot of shops sell themselves short in that pitch.
Love it.
Right. If they are really good at it, I think some of the shortfalls is that they think I'm getting certified and then I'm done. And as you said, when you're certified, the race just getting started, right? So then there's continuous learning. There's always updates that you need to keep up with. Some programs have 2 audits a year, while some others maybe have an audit every other year. But again, there's continuous training and learning that you need to take in consideration if you sign up for this.
And so much of that is not busy work or just for fun, right? It's improving your business and making sure that you're doing things the right way. And there's really, in this industry and in this business, nothing more important than that. We touched on it a little bit, but I really want to bring the point home. If you're a shop listening to our conversation right now, and they've listened to this whole series and they say, I want to pursue some sort of certification, what's the first thing they should do from here?
The first thing is look what are you repairing right now. If you repair 0% Toyota, you shouldn't probably look for Toyota certification. But if your mix is like 40% Toyota, maybe that's a good starting point. And then speak to your local Toyota dealership and figure out how the process looks like and what to ask for and what do I need to provide. Do they have already? I mean, there are shop locators on all the OEMs out there, right? Go on a shop locator from the various OEMs in your market or the ones that you're interested in and see if there are shops certified already in your area. So you find that out very quickly. And that's all before you start looking for tools and equipment or training, because you don't need to invest in something that you then find out after the fact you cannot pursue anyway.
Great
That's
advice.
my first step. I'm not sure if Gabe want to add something there, but
yeah, I would start rank my business portfolio and, like Christian said, find out, is it worth going after? Are there competition in the area that I feel I can compete with? I would maybe even see if they can provide me the units in operation, so that I know if I do have competition, if there are 2 other certified shops within 10, 20 miles of me, is there enough units to go around? Or, is that, based on a industry accident rate, what does the potential look like? Maybe there's enough for 5 and that's okay, right? Because then we can all have a share of it. But that analysis is probably the first thing that needs to get done.
Makes total sense. I would imagine for some shops listening to this conversation who are already certified, that audit or inspection day can be pretty stressful thinking about that. You don't want to fail one of those. I imagine that creates some delays or outright rejections. How can shops prepare themselves for an audit or an inspection to make sure that goes as smoothly as possible?
Most programs administrators will actually give you an email that says, hey, here's what to expect. Here's everything you're going to have to do. Here's how we're going to go through it with you. So reading those not the day of or the day before, but maybe when you get it is probably one of the easiest things that a shop can do. I think the other thing is if you are pursuing certifications and you're thinking about pursuing multiple certifications, especially multiple certifications, think about how these standards or expectations fit into your shop's culture, right? You know, when you're buying equipment for different programs, you know there's going to be a reinvestment period every so often when new technology comes out. So your culture should be, you know, putting them on a life cycle, putting them on a depreciation schedule, knowing that, hey, if I buy this in 5 years, I'm going to, you know, rotate it out and have to get new equipment and plan for that, right? Make it part of your culture. If training is a component, you know, there's lots of training in all these programs. What's the training schedule? What do you do when somebody has to go away for training? What's your backfill strategy? You know, like build that into your SOPs, build that into your culture. That's probably the best thing I can say.
I love it, guys. You've been so generous with your time. I want to hit you with 2 more questions. And the first of which is really asking you to break out your crystal ball and make a prediction here for me. Obviously, we've seen some massive evolution in terms of these OE certifications, and much of that follows evolution in the vehicle technology within the vehicles we're repairing. But how do you view the whole thought and conversation around certifications evolving here over the next few years? And what should shops be doing now to prepare for whatever that looks like in the future?
Christian,
I mean, we talked about, I can go first. We talked about technology and involvement the entire podcast, basically. And I think that's something that's not going to stop, right? You have now calibration services that even pop up as standalone, but that's obviously an integral part of a collision repair nowadays. So that's something that people need to look for. When you look at the added value that an OEM wants to bring back to a shop as well. So they look at new nuances on how they can incorporate insurance products into their financing, into their leasing, into their car sales to bring vehicles back to shops. I think that's something that we will see is going to increase as well. So these are the first 2 things that come to my mind.
Yeah. I think you're going to see the administration of programs get a little bit more sophisticated. You know, the cars and technology are advancing. You got tools like AI. I think, you know, right now you're going to see a transition period of where the programs are being administered through software platforms more so, you know, rather than just, you know, hey, send me an email and, you know, we'll take care of it through spreadsheets and emails, right? I think the liability is increasing and spreadsheets and emails really is not going to help in that situation. Plus you got all these tools like AI and different platforms and things out there. So I think you're going to see that sophistication of how programs get administered, how they sign up, how they decide on parts restriction, start to use a lot more data, but a lot more administrative technology versus the traditional, you know, even today when a shop has a gap, 9 out of 10 times they're emailing it to a support email and somebody's manually handling that. You know, you lose a lot of visibility, traceability, accountability in situations like that. So I think you're going to see the administration of programs shift into something a little bit more sophisticated.
Love it. Some great insights into the future. One last question, Gabe. I'll start with you to really bring this conversation home for a shop owner listening right now. What's one piece of advice you would give to that operator considering their very first OEM certification?
Find the right certification for you, whether it's matching with your growth target, with the revenue, if it's your area, if it's a passion of yours and it makes sense, but find the right certification for you. The days of just stacking certifications on a wall are kind of over. There's a lot to commit to. And we all know as we're doing something that we like and that we enjoy, we're better off with it. So my advice is find the right one for you.
Not going to be all things to all brands. Too intensive to do it, to learn it, to train, to equip, all sorts of things. I love that advice. Christian, how about you?
For the individual shop, I think Gabe covered this pretty much. I think what what we as a company want to contribute to a vision is really like bringing the entire collision industry closer together and really getting partners together on more or less one platform, that there's more collaboration possible than there is right now. You still have the various players kind of competing against each other, even though they could pull all a little bit more in the same direction to support a mutual customer, mutual consumer in the end of the day. And I think that's what we would like to see, that we can collaborate much more as we do right now. And if we look at auditing programs, they could be more coherent. If we look at the tools and equipment that are required, that could be more coherent, where there is just more collaboration across the board. And I think that would help the entire industry.
Love it. All about helping the entire industry. Gentlemen, you've done that today. So appreciative of both of you taking some time here, at least where I am on a rainy, stormy Monday afternoon. Christian, for folks who love what they heard today, want to get in touch with you and learn more about DEKRA, where can they do that?
They can reach out directly to us or to me at that point. christian.ruecker@dekra.com is the email address. So happy to receive feedback, questions, or support. Always open.
Wonderful. Gabe, how about you, sir?
Yeah, same format, gabriel.morley@dekra.com.
Excellent. Gentlemen, really appreciate it. A pleasure connecting, and thank you both for joining us here on the Collision Vision.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you for having us, Paul.
That is a wrap for today's episode of the Collision Vision, driven by Auto Body News. A big thank you to Christian Ruecker and Gabe Morley from DEKRA for pulling back the curtain on the real-world certification process and giving us actionable advice on how to navigate parts restrictions, dealer sponsorships, ROI considerations, and a whole lot more. If you found value in today's episode, and if you're enjoying the series here all about OEMs, don't forget to give this podcast a follow wherever you enjoy your podcast. And do me a favor, go ahead and leave us a review and share it with your network as well. Of course, full episodes are also available in video form right on YouTube. We'll be back soon with more from our OEM certification series. And as always, on behalf of the Auto Body News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.